Hi, so in this video I wanted to show how I manage my site, sethfranklin.com. I'm going to start using this site as kind of like a technical blog, so a lot of these YouTube videos I'm going to I'm going to write them as a blog and link them in the description, so if you want to read it as a blog instead of watching a YouTube video, you could do that. So for example, on this video I have actually a blog written up, and I'll put a link to this in the description if you want to read this instead of listening to this YouTube video. So in this video, I just want to go over some of the technologies I use, some of the code, and then I'll show an actual deployment. So I'm hosting all the cloud infrastructure on AWS. It's just a static site hosted on an S3 bucket with a static website hosting enabled, and then that's behind a CloudFront distribution for CDN. I'm also using AWS for generating the SSL cert through AWS Certificate Manager. Um, I also bought the domain sethfranklin.com from Cloudflare, and I also use that to manage my DNS records for it. And then for the tools, I'm using Terraform for managing the AWS resources as well as the DNS records on Cloudflare. I'm using Hugo as the static site generator, so I can have the nice formatting and themes without having to, get into HTML and CSS. So I'll give you an example. So for this blog post right here, it's actually a markdown um, file. So I go Vim, Hugo, content, posts. I think it's deploying the site.md. So this whole page is actually just a markdown. All the blog posts are just markdowns, which I like because I can just edit in my text editor. So it comes in pretty handy. I can just keep it all in version control, and I like Hugo for that reason. And then you can build the site with this theme, and then it'll build this HTML, CSS, what have you, static files to actually deploy to S3. So that's Hugo, and then I'm also using GitHub Actions to as the CI/CD pipeline, so it'll actually do the Terraform runs, make sure the infrastructure is correct, and then do the Hugo build and deploy to the S3 bucket. So the ultimate effect is, I work on my site locally. Like I'm right here, I'm running localhost port 1313 for the Hugo server. So I can edit my site locally in a text file, make sure it looks all right here. Then when I'm ready to publish, I just push to GitHub and it'll deploy for me to S3, which is pretty nice. Um, I I'll go into some of the Terraform code snippets. So if I go to Terraform, one of the cool things is that because there's a cloud, so I'm using both the AWS provider and the provider. So one of the cool things is I can make my DNS records in Cloudflare and point them to values from the AWS resources. So I go Cloudflare DNS record. Here we go. So here's one. So here's the AWS certificate. Um, you actually have to validate that you own the domain. So I set the domain name to sethfranklin.com. Um, and then the validation method is DNS. So when you do this, AWS actually has you set a CNAME record to validate that you own it. So you can actually reference that right here. So here in the name, I reference AWS the certificate domain validation options, and then there's resource record name, and then down here there's resource record value. So I don't have to manually set this all, I just handle it all in Terraform. The next record I set is another CNAME record. This is just for sethfranklin.com to point to the CloudFront distribution's domain name. So I don't have to set it manually, it's just all handled for me in Terraform when I run Terraform apply. So that's about it for the Terraform, and then if I go to the pipelines, .github, where is it? cd.github/workflows and website.yaml. So here's the CI/CD pipeline. So the first thing right here, I got these environment variables. So these are actually pulling from GitHub's secret manager. So every GitHub repository has its own secret manager. Which actually comes in handy because you don't have to have an external secret manager. Um, so I'm putting things like my AWS credentials, AWS region, Cloudflare API token, my domain name, and then the S3 bucket and key to put my Terraform state file in. Yeah, so there's one job. I just all the steps. So install Terraform, Terraform plan, Terraform apply. One of the things about Hugo is that it needs to know the S3 bucket to what do you call it, to deploy to. So I actually have a Terraform output called S3 bucket URL. So this is part highlighted. And I output it instead of to an environment variable, so Hugo can deploy to it. Install Hugo. I'm specifically installing the extended with deploy option, so I can actually run Hugo deploy. Um, this part's pretty important. So this is the part where I let Hugo know where the S3 bucket is. So in your Hugo .toml file, you got to set the exact S3 bucket location in a certain part of it. So I'm using the set command to just replace it with that environment variable I got from the Terraform. And then the last two steps are just, build the static files and then deploy to S3. I can actually show you the Hugo toml / Hugo, Hugo. Here. So right here at the end, here's where you gotta set the deployment targets to run Hugo deploy, and then for the URL, you have to set the S3 bucket. So I just use sed to replace it in my pipeline. Yeah, so that's about it. I can actually show a deployment of the site. So this page I haven't actually deployed to the actual production site yet. It's not there yet, so I can actually show how that works. So if I go to actions, here's all my pipeline runs, but I'm gonna push the changes to GitHub and I'll show it deploy. So if I do git add git commit, adding blog post about deploying this site. I do the push, this should set off my pipeline. So I go back to my pipelines, refresh. Here we go, now it's running one job, and it's running through the commands, so I'll wait, and it should take under a minute, so I'll just wait and walk through them all. So set up Terraform is just gonna install Terraform and whatnot. Oh, it already ran. I guess it was just took a while to load on my end, but yeah, so it already ran under 36 seconds. So I'll go through all the steps. So you check out the repository, set up Terraform, Terraform init. This one's Terraform format check, just to make sure the formatting looks good. Terraform plan, Terraform apply. Here's the part that outputs the S3 bucket URL, so that I don't actually see it, because actually, yeah, that's another cool thing about GitHub Actions and the secret repository manager is that give me a sec. Terraform plan. Yeah, so if there's any secrets in the console output, it'll actually just, what do you call it, censor it out with these 3 stars. So that comes handy because this is a public GitHub repository. I don't want people seeing it. Yeah, so Terraform plan, Terraform apply. There weren't any changes to make it, didn't change at all, so it's good. It also outputted the S3 bucket URL that Hugo needs to deploy to. Install Hugo. Here's the part where it says the S3 bucket target. Builds the site, so it tells me, what pages did it make, static files and whatnot. And the cool thing about when I do deploy, it actually shows you what files it changed. So it says deploying to production target. Here's the S3 bucket URL. It says identified 21 files to upload, 197 kilobytes, and 0 files to delete. So it'll tell you exactly what is creating, updating, and deleting, which can come in handy. And yeah, that's about it. So if I check back on the production site, let me see if it changed at all. Doesn't look like it. The thing is, though, this is behind a CloudFront CDN's cache, which the TTL is 60 minutes. So this home page might take a while to update, just because of the cache. Um, I guess a step in your pipeline could be just invalidating the cache on CloudFront, but I know that costs money, so I didn't want to bother. But I can imagine if you're running like some kind of important production website, maybe you've invalidated certain pages like index.html that you know are gonna be a hotspot. So maybe if I don't think the actual post is in the cache, so let me just go there and see if that works. There we go. So yeah, the actual post is there. It wasn't in the cache, so yeah, it's deployed now. So yeah, it comes pretty handy. Hugo's pretty easy to use. Comes out with pretty nice sites that work well on mobile. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching.